1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Sound Check. Friday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. It is the Friday show, the last show before Everton play Crystal Palace on Sunday afternoon. We are live in the Royal Blue studio today and I am your host Ian Croll. Joining me for today's episode to talk all things Everton, we've got the return of the Echo's Everton FC correspondent home and away, Joe Thomas. Joe, I don't think I've given you that intro for a while. I've always just said Joe Thomas. It's lazy of me. I should really give you your proper title. How are things?
Put some respect on my name, Ian.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I do apologise.
Don't be daft. Yeah, good. Cheers. Good.
No doom and gloom. All good.
I don't know. I've been doing a lot of thinking about it this week and trying to quite work out what my thoughts are on where Everton are this season. Obviously, we'll explore that in some depth today, I think. But I don't feel doom and gloom, no. I don't.
That's because you're off for a week on holiday. That's why.
Maybe. But like, in the same way that I think perhaps the last international break came at a bad time for Everton, maybe this one comes at a good time.
Yeah, I like that thinking. Hopefully this game against Crystal Palace comes at a good time. But to be fair, this is going to be your last show probably for a good couple of days, at least a week. So we'll have to get you back on as soon as possible. When do you think your next show will be? Post international break?
No, not at all. I'll still be around. So yeah, and obviously off work next week, but I'll be keeping an eye on everything. So
okay. Today's agenda, it is the Crystal Palace preview show, as we usually do on a Friday. We've got the usual team selection talk and predictions, plus much more as well, so stick with us throughout. Just a word for our sponsor before we do get going. To get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/EFC. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description. I've just realised reading that the spiel out to our sponsor that the NordVPN app would be ideal for your trip away next week.
Yeah, it would be.
We'll have to get you some free codes. As always, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Support is greatly appreciated. Let's get straight into it. We've done a couple of pods this week, Joe, from following on from Monday night's game. Everyone's given their opinion. It's the first time you're on this week. I mean, I feel like since the Derby defeat, it's been a bit of a rough, tough few weeks for Everton. And obviously gone out the cup, got beat at Derby, we drew with West Ham. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, I just feel like it all stemming down a little bit to Everton ultimately struggling in front of goal, creating chances and scoring goals as well. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the issues perhaps start a little bit further back in the pitch as well. I think that, we know that we knew coming out the back of the summer that there were still some big issues in the squad that hadn't been addressed. And I think that we've seen them come to the fore a little bit over the last few weeks, particularly the issue at fullbacks. Yeah. And also centre midfield as well, the lack of depth there with Merlin Roll having been out. And also, Michael Keane's been fantastic, but it's a different type of defence with Jared Brantwaite in there. And I think in some of the opposition that Everton have played in recent weeks, they've perhaps exposed the slightly disjointed nature of Everton's setup as a result of that. It feels like we have an attack that is built to play on the front foot, but a defence that's built to sit back and trying to marry the two up. That hasn't quite worked out how to do that against some better sides. But despite having said that, I think that Villa, they deserve to win. And they
Villa?
Obviously,
Everton
we're talking about since the last international break. Villa obviously fell within that. They deserve to win that game, and I think they created good chances to win that game. chance creation has gone down in recent weeks, but I still think they could have done better against West Ham. And I was relatively positive, would be the wrong word, because I know there was a lot of disappointment around the West Ham game, but I thought that Everton started both halves really well and created chances at the beginning of both halves. And that had been probably the Achilles heel of the Liverpool and the Wolves defeats. And obviously they took the first one they took the Michael Keane chance. They had a couple of other good chances as well. So I know that when you look at things like XG and stuff, the numbers aren't exactly off the charts, but I feel like Everton are putting themselves in positions where they can seize control of games, and that is a positive. And they're doing that by playing better football and a different type of football than what they were doing even at the back end of last season, and that has the potential to be a positive. It's just trying to work out how to get the best, probably just a case of working out how to get the best finishes in front of goal beyond putting balls into Michael Keane can meet. I do really think that one of the things that needs to be discussed over the kind of this fortnight coming up is how to get the best out of Barry and Beto, because I think that a lot of thought has gone into how to create as many chances as possible without maybe thinking about what types of chances are creating and who you want on the end of them. So I do think that whilst Beto has missed some big chances, I do think that the team could probably be set up better to exploit what he can offer, or Tieno Barry, depending on how you go about it. So
I'm worried that this is going to be too much of an agreeable podcast, to be honest. So we need some comments that would disagree with us that I can read out. But just for balance, I'm glad that you said the word disjointed, because it's a word I used after the West Ham game, and I completely get everything that you're saying with regards to Beto and Barry. Criticism is to an extent justified. However, it's not like the missing bags full of chances as well. Everton have obviously put out a stat this week with regards to chances created by certain Jack Grealish and Dewsbury Hall, and that's fine. I think it's obviously a bit of positive spin, if you want to call it from that. What I want to kind of look at really is the disjointed aspect of what you believe the team to be, and obviously what I believe the team to be. And there's no greater evidence for me on this from comments from Illiman and Dye this past week to Everton's media team, and I think they're going to be in the programme notes for Sunday. So Ndai's been speaking to the Everton's media team. He's opened up about playing on the right side of midfield, and I just want to read some of his quotes out, and obviously if you can react to them as well. So he says, "I'm still getting used to it. I'm finding my best ways, i.e. playing on the right-hand side of the midfield. The way I'm playing on the left is different from the way I'm playing on the right, but it's good. I've scored 2 goals playing on the right, coming in at the back post and being alive in there. I feel I can still do more, score more goals, create more goals, but I'm still learning the role. It's new to me because in the past I've tended to play more off the left or down the middle." Now, Ndai's done okay playing on the right. However, I don't necessarily think it is his most effective position, and I do think that is proof here of why the team looks so disjointed. Not just because of that. I think there's a number of players not necessarily playing in their natural positions, and they are taking a little bit of time to adjust. And Ndai is just one of a few I feel like could be utilised in a more effective way.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily about players that playing out of position and taking time to adjust now. I think it's almost more players playing out of position, and because they've built their whole careers around playing in different positions, they have a ceiling as to what they can do and how much they can learn and change their game in the newer positions. And probably like someone that I point to on that front probably be like a Jake O'Brien. I think Jake O'Brien has done a brilliant job at right back. I think he was a massive part of that revival under David Moyes when he came in January. One of the first things he did was put O'Brien in, made Everton more solid at the back, but also he kind of became a bit of an attacking force as well, because I mean we saw it against West Ham and we certainly saw it against Brentford, and Everton tried to utilise this in the final stages against Liverpool at Anfield. The sight of him crashing in at the back post must fill those fullbacks with absolute dread, because obviously his size, and he picked up a few useful goals and some goal involvements because of that. But he's also a centre-back playing at right back, isn't he? And he will only ever be a centre-back playing at right back. Yeah. And whilst I think he's done a good job, and I think that's continued into this season, there is only so much that his ability to be versatile can take him. And I think that's part of the issue, where you see that if you had a specialist right back, you could see a lot more from that side of things. I look forward to the day when Jake O'Brien gets a chance to play in his more natural position in centre back, because I think that he's obviously building up a lot of Premier League experience now, and I think he'd be very good when he gets into that position. Similarly, when it comes to what players can do and how much they're being asked of, I look at Vitaly Mykolenko on the left-hand side. Now, he isn't a square peg in a round hole. He's a left-back, and from a defensive perspective, when he's fit, and I'm not sure he's always been fit when he's been playing this season, that might be part of the reason for some of the struggles that he's had when he has been on the pitch. But his strength is defending. And what Everton probably need right now if they're going to persist with Jack Grealish on the left, and I don't think they should this weekend, but I think if they're going to persist with Jack Grealish on the left, really they need a left back that can overlap and can take defenders away from Grealish and can preoccupy people, because he's not really getting that. How often? I know one of the frustrations is how little Grealish is shooting when he cuts in onto his right foot. And I get that, but I think that one of the problems that Grealish has is, he's got two problems. One is that I think it's become quite predictable that Everton are going to go to him. So defenders know to load up on that side. And two, they know that he's going to come onto his right foot. And the problem with him shooting is he's got a crowded box in front of him. He's doubled up on. Perhaps the movement of someone like a Beto or Barry isn't intelligent enough to take players away from the channels that he might look to shoot in, get players out of the box, get players out of the way. But you saw it time and time again against Liverpool in that final half hour when Grealish was just on fire, and it looked like Everton were pushing they pushed really hard to find an equaliser, but they couldn't quite create a golden chance. The amount of times you'd see Grealish just pause on the edge of the box and almost just look to his left, waiting for someone to careen down the side of him. Even if he's not going to give him the ball, it takes a defender away. It makes the defence think about another threat that they might have to deal with. It clears bodies from in front of Jack Grealish as well. I just think we just see a few limitations around that. So I think those are big issues. And then I also say I think that in Tarkowski and Keane, there's a very effective centre-back partnership, and I think Keane has done very well this season. I think he's been Everton's best defender. He's also probably been their most ruthless finisher as well, which is a story that we've come to know over the last few years because of the issues with strikers and with the forwards. But it feels very much like there's a back four there with a centre-back at right-back and Mykolenko being the type of player he is, and with Keane and Tarkowski perhaps not having the same level of, certainly not having the pace of someone like an O'Brien or a Branthwaite. What you have there is an Everton defence that's very, very adept and probably one of the best in the league at defending the box. That's why Everton have been okay over the last few years. Obviously, it's been terrible years, but Everton have pulled to safety because they've been able to give up possession and just defend the box. Now they're trying to be a little bit more adventurous this season, trying to have the ball further up the pitch. You don't have a problem. Did a back four push up the centre-back, so they push up the pitch with them, in which case they leave themselves exposed to the balls over the top because they haven't got the pace, or do they play it safe and sit back, in which case you end up with chasms of space between the centre-backs and the centre-mids, or the centre-mids and the forward, and as a result things become a lot more disjointed. So I kind of think the part of the problem that Everton have got at the moment is just, it's less almost about getting the best 11 players on the pitch and now trying to work out what the most effective setup is to kind of, what's the best sum of all parts that Everton can get, and does that need a little bit of experimentation? I don't know that necessarily the answers lie within the squad on some of these issues, because I think that O'Brien probably is the best right back that Moyes has got as his option, because they weren't able to get Kenny Tete in, they didn't get somebody else in the summer. Left back, I've spoken here before that I would be interested to see how big a project it would be to try and get Dwight McNeil to try and convert into a left back. It might be very, very difficult, but that's probably his only real chance of getting anywhere near the side at the moment. And obviously Adam Asnu, his attacking wise, we suspect, or we know from his history, that that's where his strength lies. I'd have liked to have seen more of him, even if it's coming off the bench. I certainly think in the latter stages against Wolves in the Carabao Cup, when you're looking to make an attacking change with 15 minutes to go, putting on Mykolenko improved the side because it meant that you actually had a left back playing at left back. but Mikalenko was never going to carve open the chances or cause problems for the Wolves' defence in a way that maybe Asnu might do. It might leave holes at the back, but you're chasing a game by that point. Now you want someone with a bit of pace and a bit of guard that can get forward, give someone like Grealish an option. I'm surprised that a bit surprised that we still haven't seen that, even just as a test.
Obviously, a lot to get into there. Just first off, I don't disagree with a lot of the things that you're saying. Moyes, from my point of view, is probably picking his best team that he's got on paper rather than maybe picking what is the most effective team.
I think so, and I think that whilst we might pick at the seams of that, I do think that we have to remember, obviously, we started the season well. Leeds was the only really bad performance, I think, in the league. That was just a really bad night at the office. But of the games that we're still disappointed beyond that, even though we're looking at this and thinking maybe there are a few things that could have been better, I still think that they deserve to win against Aston Villa. And I still think that they could have taken that game away. I'm not sure they ever looked comfortable against West Ham. And obviously in the last half an hour, West Ham probably looked like they would be more likely to get the winner. But I think that the players that were on the pitch put Everton in a situation where they could and probably should have seized control of that game before it flipped against them. So, even though we'll go into this and we'll both pick up issues, I think this is something that we probably all need to just take a little step back and just think of, because obviously I know there was frustration after the West Ham game. They're not a million miles off. And some of these problems were unavoidable given the amount of work that needed to be done over the summer. Yeah,
without a doubt. And I've openly admitted, following on from Monday, I was really annoyed and frustrated, but having had a couple of days to think, there's definitely some perspective that is needed. Just sticking with the disjointed theme of the side, you obviously, your response to that was, first of all, to talk about O'Brien as right back and Mikalenko and Garner going in there. I think there's nothing Moyes can do with regards to those. I've said previously that I do think the fullback situation is actually worse off than the striker situation. I know that sounds a bit mad, but I just think in terms of the balance to the squad, there's literally nothing Moyes can do. O'Brien has played his way into the team on the right-hand side as the fullback.
And he's there on merit.
No, exactly. Coleman, obviously, we know his limitations at his age, and Nathan Patterson, quite clearly, Moyes doesn't fancy him, and he's just not good enough at this moment in time. Mikalenko is a left back, however, he's limited going forward, and he's been injured for a lot of the games where James Garner's had to go in. Now, you could argue, I think we've both agreed on this, why not give McNeil a go, certainly, in one or two games where you think experimentation could work. So I've got no issues with that to an extent, because there's nothing Moyes can do until he gets his hands, in the transfer market once again. It's more so the midfield, finding that balance in midfield, as well as the three behind the striker. Referring back to the Ndai comments, Moyes is putting Ndai on the right-hand side to accommodate a Jack Grealish. And I've also argued that, said it repeatedly, that Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall for me is not a natural number 10, although he is playing as the number 10. So I just feel like Moyes needs to start making some harsh decisions. It's not about picking your best players on paper. It's about picking the team, the 11 that is more effective to win football games. Now, for me, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall should be in that team, but it should be a little bit deeper. So then that obviously poses more questions about who should come out from the two of James Garner and Idrissa Gana-Gueye. And I'm happy to debate that, but I also think Jack Grealish has had a fantastic start to the season. The highest assists contributor in the league. I think it's worked to an extent, and now he's getting doubled up on. I just think now that Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall is obviously going to be suspended, Moyes is going to be forced into a change. What's he actually going to do? We can come on to that, but I think we need to get Ndai back on the left-hand side. I think Dewsbury-Hall goes a little bit deeper when he can play, and Grealish goes in as the number 10, and then you've got Dibblin as that right option as well. I just think we're playing a lot of square pegs in round holes. Those players can play in those positions, but it's not effective. It's not being effective for us to pick up points and win games.
Yeah, I mean, the other option, of course, if you want to drop Dewsbury-Hall deeper, is to not play with a 10 and to play a flat midfield three, or have James Garner sitting a bit deeper, and maybe that might be helpful in some games. Maybe that might help them to reassert a little bit of control and authority and a bit deeper down the pitch. I think that Iliman Ndai is being sacrificed on the right, and I think that it is hindering his game. And I do think that when you look at the moves that they made over the summer, right wing and right back were clearly two very big issues, and they obviously haven't effectively solved the right back one. And Diblin looks like he'll be a good signing on the right wing, but they're still playing Ilman and Dye out there, and it seems strange that one of the things that the attacking policy did was obviously end up shifting Everton's most effective attacking player of last year out of position, and I'm not sure that Ilman and Dye necessarily deserves that, and I think that Everton are worse off because of it. I think that I would like to see Ndai either play in the middle or on the left. I think that what I would do this weekend is, I think Dewsbury Hall has played well, and I think Carlos Alcaraz has been a little bit hard done by. I thought in the first half against Wolves, I thought he did okay in the Carabao Cup. He got the ball deep and carried it forward quite often, and got himself into good positions to pass to someone in front of him or to shoot. But I thought he was a bit undone by the lack of movement by the players in front of him and around him, that kind of left him stuck for options once he got 30 yards from goal. But I think that what I would do is this weekend, like, Dewsbury Hall doesn't deserve to be suspended. The last 2 yellow cards have been absolutely abominable, and I think that Dewsbury Hall has played well this season as a player, and I think that he represents a significant step up in quality and options, certainly technically, that Everton have got this season. I do think there is a way in which him being absent might not be the worst thing in the world, because it might force David Moyes to make a little bit of a change that he perhaps otherwise wouldn't have done independently. Obviously, he has to deal with the absence of Keane and Dewsbury Hall. For me, what I would do is I would move and Dye over to the left. I'd put Grealish in the 10 and have Diblin on the right. And that's what I'd do. And I imagine quite a few people would do that, or a variation of that. Maybe they might have Dye in the middle, which is a role I think he can play. And I think he'd do that better than what he's doing at right wing. But I like the idea of having Everton's best runner with the ball, or one of up there with Grealish on the left in his natural position. Obviously, he can go both ways. Sometimes he goes to the byline, sometimes he can cut inside. But what it'd also do is it would give someone like Jack Grealish, he's probably most effective coming off the left, but I mean, he's so technically good that he can play in the middle. He's got the vision, and he's got the intelligence. And I'd just like to see Grealish with runners either side of him, Diblin running down the right and Dye running down the left, so that you've got other people that not only give him more options when he's got the ball at his feet to try and pick out, but also create a little bit more space around him as well. If you double up on Grealish in the centre, then you're going to leave one of your right or your left flanks exposed, and then hopefully that's where you hurt them. And maybe if Everton concentrated a little bit more on getting in behind the defences in turn, whether you play Barry or Beto up front, those might be the type of balls that they feel more comfortable meeting. Beto got his goal from a Grealish nod across that left him pretty much with an open goal a couple of yards out. I know that Beto at his best is probably not probably, he's playing up against a high back line, and he can turn defences and power through behind them. But it doesn't feel like Everton are going to play that way at the moment, when they've got people as comfortable on the ball at the top end of the pitch as Dewsbury Hall, as Grealish and things like that. And
something's got to give though, hasn't it?
Someone's got to give a little bit. But I wonder if that might be, that's what I would do. Whether or not David Moyes will do it, I wouldn't be that surprised if he just basically did a Carlos Alcaraz in for Dewsbury Hall and kept everything else the same. But
to be honest, we will come on to team selection, but we might as well just...
But I've told you what I would do, and I think that there are lots of parts of that Everton side that perhaps operating at 60-70%, and maybe that's where the team's operating at 60-70%. And 60-70% is good enough to have given them the start that they've got. It's good enough to probably make them competitive for a mid-table spot, maybe pushing into the top half. But it is also going to cause a lot of frustration, and it does feel like they're just not quite making the most of everything they've got at the minute. And I think that if you had a little play around with what you've got, it's going to be difficult, because the games after the international break, they've got City, they've got Spurs, are going to be tough. But I just think they need to change a little bit.
We'll come on to team selection in a bit, but that's all Moyes will do, in my opinion. It will be he won't want to disrupt anything too much. He won't want to experiment, and I can get that. I just think it'll be a straight swap for Alcaraz in for Dewsbury
And maybe
Hall.
that, because, Alcaraz has linked up pretty well with Beto in the past. Another thing that Alcaraz has done, this is kind of where I made the point about maybe not playing with a 10. One of the things I thought was really impressed with Alcaraz last season is I think he is a 10. But there were a few times, particularly Crystal Palace away and I think Wolves away, he came off the bench and steadied the ship a little bit, where he played more as a pure centre midfielder. And he had the ability to do that in a free. He brought a decent bit of balance to the side. And actually, again, obviously in those games and with that Everton team and the style of play that they had at the back end of last season, they were still sitting a lot deeper and trying to hit teams on the counter. So it gave space for him to try and feed better. But he did find that route relatively comfortably. So, yeah, I don't think there are huge complaints about where Everton are right now, but I do think there's probably a sense from all of us that they just quite haven't. There's just a little bit of a missed opportunity. They're not far. They're very close to having taken 3 points from Villa, 3 points from West Ham, and a point from Liverpool. Very close, and it wouldn't have taken that much to maybe get those results or some of those results. And I think probably one of the other elements of disappointment is it does feel like some of those issues are maybe a little bit self-inflicted would be the wrong word, but it feels like there are probably more obvious answers to us, at least looking at it from afar, than perhaps it seems to David Moyes when he's looking at his substitutes bench and when he's looking at his lineup.
Yeah.
I miss out Wolves there because I think Wolves was just that was completely self-inflicted. I think obviously Everton could have put a very strong side out there and they still could have lost. Wolves are a good team with some good players, but whilst I see positives from the Liverpool, the Villa and the West Ham games, and I think that a few 50-50s go the other way or the odd decision goes the other way or one or two tweaks makes a big difference with Wolves, I just think that was a mess.
Just two comments here I want to address, kind of disagreeing with what we're saying.
Okay.
So the Blues have said, Kiernan Dewsbury Hall has been brilliant in the number 10. I think that's a bit of a disagreement to me saying he should play deeper. I don't disagree that he hasn't been good. I just think he's not effective as he would be as a deeper holding midfielder. I think he can advance the ball forward a lot more and a lot better. And then the same commenter says, Grealish just won Player of the Month from playing on the left. He's the last person who should move over to the right now. I mean, I don't think we're saying he should move over to the right.
Move over to the right, no. But it's more about just trying to see, do we have a system? Do we build a system where only Jack Grealish shines, or do we try and do it where the full three does?
That's a great shout.
And Grealish obviously won Player of the Month playing off the left at a point when no one was really sure how he started Everton. And I think that because of the attention that he brought upon himself by being so effective coming off the left, you've then had a situation where the teams that were playing Everton in this second tranche of fixtures have obviously looked wasted in the first month and gone, well, if we neutralise Jack Grealish, then maybe Everton aren't so much of a threat going forward. That's what they've done, and Everton haven't been so much of a threat going forward. And that's what we've got to do, almost kind of adapt to the situation. It's not a case of, is Grealish a better left winger than Dye, or better in that position than Dye, because you could have a good argument over that. It's whether Everton are better with those three players or put Diblin in or Alcaraz in playing in slightly different positions. And I think that if you put Grealish and Dye closer to each other, I do actually think that both will improve. Okay,
just want to speak about Beto and Barry, because I guess it'd be hard pressed to guess what striker Moyes is going to go with this Saturday, certainly after both players haven't really set the world alight, which is fair enough. But I'm glad he said this, because I'm not the only one saying we shouldn't just blame both strikers, Beto and Barry. Michael Ball, in his weekly column for The Echo, has kind of said the same thing, and I'll just read a couple of segments from it. So he said, whoever Moyes gives a start to never seems to pay him back. They get given the shirt, flatter to deceive. He subs them off, and the new one plays a little bit better and then gets the start next. But the cycle continues. It will keep happening until Everton find a way to play one or both of them. He then goes on to say, Beto has struggled this season, but it's not all his fault. I now think it is time to try something different. We know the limitations of Beto's game, but we also know his strengths, and playing to them would be helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my point is we got the best out of Beto towards the back end of last season. We all know that he's probably not the answer moving forward. I think that's fine. But he did score goals last season, and it was because we were playing obviously a different way to them what we're trying to play now, and we're obviously going through that transition. So we did a podcast on Wednesday, Joe, where we discussed who will be Everton's main man in the next couple of weeks. Beto, Barry, and we even threw Iliman and Dye there because we know a lot of people have been calling for him to play as the false number 9. But I still think if Ndai was to play up top, we would still need to change our approach and change our game. Otherwise, the same thing, again, as Michael Ball has just said, that the same thing is just going to happen. Repeat the cycle. I just think if you play Ndai up top and you play the same way, get the ball out wide, crosses the ball into the box, it's going to be very difficult for Iliman and Dye to get his head onto that, unless you almost try and walk the ball into the back of the net where you can get into the 6-yard box and he can score those goals. What I will say is Iliman and Dye will probably be better at holding the ball up and linking the play up well. Again, I just can't see Moyes playing that way.
Probably not at the weekend, no. I mean, he is aware of Ndai as an option up top, and it is something that has come across his mind at various points. But again, it's if you put him up top, you then lose out on his creativity, don't you? So I think, there's less creativity because he's further up the pitch. I think Beto's had a difficult start to the season, but he has still scored 2 goals. I mean, I would start Barry at the weekend because I think that the way Everton are playing at the minute relies on a striker. You're less. It's not so much always asking a striker to put the ball in the back of the net. It's more to occupy defenders and to have link up play as well as chase lost causes. And both Beto and Barry are quite good at that and hassling defenders. But I think that what we've seen, think back to the Brighton game, both goals. Beto was involved in the build-up to... Barry was involved in the build-up to that. He just looks like he's got a little bit more about him from a technical perspective. He just looks a little bit more comfortable playing with his back to goal and
do you think he offers
the odd give and go.
Anything different, though, to what Beto offers?
That, yeah. I think he's much better playing with his back to goal and being able to link up and feed the attacking midfielders around him. So... I would look to do that because I also think that Barry deserves a shot now because Beto's had quite a few games where the problem with Beto is when he's had chances recently, he has missed them. Let's say that opening one against Villa was frustrating. There were a few around the edges on West Ham which he could have done better. That year he was in a lot of space for that Tarkowski ball in, which he headed it. And I'm not saying he could have got a lot more power on it, but he probably, if he'd have read the situation a little bit better, probably could have taken advantage of it a little bit more because he probably didn't realise how much time and space he had. He had that big chance. I mean, I know it was against Mansfield. He scored against Mansfield, but he missed a 1-on-1 against them, didn't he? Just before his goal. I think he's missed enough opportunities for you to have to put Barry in just to be able to say to Beto, even if you think he's your number 1 going forward, there has to be some implications. There has to be some consequences to missing those chances if you want to create an environment where players think they're going to be able to get a chance. Those people that are in the periphery of the squad feel like they will get the chance to come in. If performances warrant it from those in front of them. So I'd start Barry. I mean, I'm not really panicking over the strikers at the minute, to be honest. And I do think that it's more of an issue around the team as a whole as opposed to just the strikers. I still think that
I agree.
If you put those strikers in the right positions or if you play the right way to them, I think they will get enough goals for Everton this season for everyone to be relatively content. Bearing in mind, I also think that the attacking midfielders would chip in as well. It's just, again, like with the attacking midfield and trying to find that balance to make the unit more effective rather than necessarily making certain individuals more effective.
Just with you saying, if Alcaraz was to come in, and we've talked in this podcast about how Alcaraz and Beto formed a decent partnership last season. If Alcaraz was to come in, would you still go with Barry? Just on the basis that those two formed a partnership.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't put Alcaraz in tomorrow, in on Sunday. So if Moyes puts I suspect Moyes might put Alcaraz in and play Beto. Maybe I don't know. So we press conferences later, and I haven't spoken to him since Monday. But what I would be looking to do is I'd be looking to bring Grealish into the middle and then and have Barry up top, and you can change it if that's not quite working. And obviously, there's some people there in the comments saying that Grealish should stay on the left. Well, I think that Ndiaye would be better in the middle than he is on the right as well. So there's that option. You can keep Grealish out on the left. I still think Grealish on the left would benefit from having Ndiaye in the middle. And that isn't saying Dewsbury Hall's done bad at all, because I think he's done very well.
Yeah,
it's just trying to find, Everton have made a lot of progress over the course of the summer, and this is a very different team to what it is. But there's always going to be friction as you try and move from different players, different setups, different ideologies, different approaches. There are always going to be kind of bumps in the road on that process, and I think that we found that in this little run of fixtures, having started, and it's because we started so well in that first month that there's a bit more disappointment around now.
I think it all comes down to obviously what's in Moyes' head, but whether Moyes thinks Dibbling is ready to play on the right-hand side for a full game, a 70, 80-minute game, because I'm sure he would come off if he was to play. But if he doesn't think he's ready, then it's probably Alcaraz. If he does think he's ready, then he starts, and you've got Grealish in the middle or Ndiaye in the middle, vice versa, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think there's any reason to think that Dibbling couldn't start a game now. Obviously, he was playing in the Premier League
evidence not really been there, has it?
He's only had bit parts to play this time round. So a bit like Barry and a bit like Barry, a bit like Alcaraz, a bit like Dibbling. I'm not really sure that they've had enough opportunities.
No, I agree.
For anyone to be able to write them off already. So
no, we're certainly not writing them off. I think there's been ample games and ample opportunity for Moyes to try out a couple of players on the bench when we've been losing a game or drawing, and he's chosen not to for whatever reason. Moving on a little bit then, before we kind of wrap things up with predictions and team selection. Jack Grealish left out of the England squad. Any surprises there? Obviously slightly disappointing for him, but his form has been there, I guess, from an early season.
Yeah, I think there's a belief there that, certainly from the player's perspective, that if he has the form, if he shows the form at Everton, that Tuchel will pick him. We haven't seen that yet, but he's been very good this season. And if Everton if he can carry on that, I mean, this next month, once we get back from the international fixtures, will be a challenging one because of the type of players the type of teams they come up against. Obviously, he won't be able to play against Manchester City because that's where he's on loan from. But be interesting. But I think if he carried on in the same form, then he'll probably be knocking on the door, around Christmas. There is another international break in November, isn't it? We could probably do with people around him putting some of the chances away, maybe.
I just want to briefly speak about the stadium and the atmosphere.
All right, okay.
Which obviously can be a big advantage to any home side, and certainly for Everton. So I was just reading our Geordie piece.
Okay.
And there was just a bit of a paragraph that stuck out to me. And it was slightly negative, although I don't necessarily disagree with it too much. And this comes from an Echo Geordie contributor, so Paul McParlin. I've never met Paul, don't know him, but this is what he said. So the early silence of the home fans being loudly outsung by the away following told its own story. Changes were needed up front and in the midfield, but the manager, apparently not sensing the crowd's urgency, seemed reluctant to make them. Forget that last bit, I just added that in. But in terms of the atmosphere and everything since we've been to Hill Dickinson, have you think that everything's followed on from Goodison atmosphere-wise and things have been okay?
Well, it's never going to follow on from Goodison. One, because Goodison was so effective at creating that incredible atmosphere, and two, because people, were settled into their habits from years and decades of having going, weren't they? Everybody knew kind of where the noise would come from, where the chants would start, and things like that. Obviously, there's always going to be, again, just like on the pitch, off the pitch, there's so much transition this season that there's always going to be bits where it jars and doesn't quite link up as well as you'd hope it to or want it to. And everyone's still kind of getting familiar to the new stadium. I think that, when the atmosphere gets going, I think it is very effective. And, at the start of the game, they did that light show ahead of the game on Monday night. And by the end of that, when Z-Cars came, the siren came on Z-Cars, the noise was really loud, and I thought that was quite impressive. And I thought there were various moments during the West Ham game when once the crowd got going, then, it was really effective. But it's always going to be difficult as home supporters if it looks like your team's kind of running out of steam a little bit, or when things get a little bit frustrating on the pitch. So, it doesn't I don't think it necessarily matters where you are. That last half an hour is always going to be a little bit tougher. Obviously, could Moyes make some changes or make different changes, make them earlier? Yeah, yes or no. But obviously, there are always going to be games when you come up against good opposition. So there are always going to be games when they have their moments of dominance as well. And I think that obviously, something I've written about this week, Chris has written about this week, the 1878s were so key to building such an incredible atmosphere at Goodison, and desperate to try and be able to replicate that at the Hill Dickinson. But obviously, it's a new stadium, and it shows the scale of change that Everton have got and their ambition. But what looked like bed sheets in the Gladys Street now look like napkins in the South Stand, don't they? Because of just the immense scale of it all, and they need support and funding to try and have their impact, leave their print on Hill Dickinson, on those match day atmospheres. So people can support them, that'd be brilliant, because once they get up and running, then that'll help as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just some comments on that. So Nash EFC says, playing well gets the atmosphere going above all else. I couldn't agree more. It's like, what comes first, the egg or the chicken? That's that argument. Tazul Islam says, the atmosphere was strangely subdued and people wanted the stadium to be 60k. What I will say, Joe, this is kind of a separate topic to itself and we haven't got time to go into it, but there was a lot of people leaving the seats before the final whistle, and it was a night game. I get people got anxiety about getting home safe and sound with regards to public transport. I get all that. Do you think the club have got a little bit of an issue with people leaving the seats before the final whistle? I was a little bit not disappointed, but I thought the game's in the balance. Yeah, it's not like we're winning or getting beat, so the results sorted. The game was in the balance, and we kind of needed the support. I'm in a different boat, so I don't want people to jump on me. You get the train or more public transport, so you have to leave early to get home. My routine is I can get to and from the ground fairly easy, so I'm happy to stay. But I'd never seen that at Goodison Park. I wouldn't say it was a mass exodus as such, but certainly there was a lot of empty seats before that final whistle, and it could have been down to the fact that it was a disappointing second half, and we didn't look like maybe we were going to score. But with the game being in the balance, I thought we can still win here. Why are we leaving?
Yeah, I mean, look, that last 10 minutes is when I'm at my busiest, so I can't claim to be looking around the stands too much then, because obviously I've got so much work that I need to have finished on the final whistle or before then. So it's basically my laptop screen and the pitch is what I'm paying attention to. I think that we're obviously going to have a lot of night games. Everton seem to be popular for a Monday night slot. We've got a couple of, albeit they're away against Man United and Sunderland. We've got a few more coming up. Monday night's never a great game for a game of football. You just start in the week and people got children to get home for school and got work the next day and things like that as well. Look, I think that if the team on the pitch is giving people a reason to stay, normally they will stay. And again, I think it's a bit easy to get too misty-eyed about last season at Goodison, because there were a lot of games and where the results were far worse with 10 minutes to go, and there were a lot of games where the performances were far worse and they looked even less likely to get a win or get something out of the game, particularly in that first half of the season under Dyche, when the likes of Brighton and Bournemouth and Southampton in the Cup and Brentford with 10 men and Fulham, and they all left very happy with either draws or wins, didn't they? So it'll hopefully it'll come.
Work itself out. People don't like change, do they? I certainly don't. Right, before we do predictions and team selection, which you've already given you a big hint to anyway, let's look at some comments. So Yorkshire Toffee says, I'd play Barry for a run of games now.
Yeah, I agree.
Which you've agreed with. Nash EFC says, Dibbling and Barry to start for me and Grealish as the number 10.
Yep.
Think sides are now doubling up on Grealish, making him less effective, and we need to be less predictable. That's what you said. Kevin Kraft says Moyes should play Beto and Barry together. See what happens. It's an option, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It'd be interesting.
Puter, maybe we should flood the midfield and stop their forwards. Beto runs from deep and scores simples.
Well, that's what worked from last season when things were going well, didn't it? And we started this podcast by talking about that kind of problem with trying to work out. Well, I say you've got an attacking three that like to have possession of the ball high up the pitch, but you've got a in its current state, is probably more content sitting deep on the edge of the box and defending that. So maybe one of the questions to try and work out for Moyes over an international break is whether or not he wants to be a team that dominates possession and creates chances and builds wave upon wave of pressure, as they were so effective at doing at Wolves in the league. They just kept coming and coming and coming, and Wolves couldn't handle it. Or do they want to revert back to what they were at their best under Deitch and under Moyes last season, where they sat deep, defended the box, which they're incredibly capable of doing, and then they've got players there that can exploit teams on the counter, almost do what Forest did last season, which was a better version of what Everton did, because unlike Everton, they actually got runners up and around Chris Wood, the likes of Elanga and Gibbs-White and Anderson, and Everton had the chance to get more players up and around Beto because they have to have better forward players this season. So maybe that's one way of doing it, at least while Jared Branthwaite's injured.
Last comment. So Eltel on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. I don't think Moyes likes Alcaraz. He's only given him a 2-year contract. Alcaraz can change a game. Yeah,
he's given him a 2+1, and I agree that seems a little bit peculiar in this day and age. I think Alcaraz played so well, particularly the back end of last season, that, like I said, he didn't have a choice over whether or not to sign him, but heading into a summer where you're never quite sure how the chips would fall, it would have been mad to have not signed him. I like Alcaraz, and I think that he's probably, I'm not necessarily saying he should be starting, but I think he's probably deserved more minutes he's had this season. I'd like to kind of see him get an opportunity. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if he starts on Sunday. Like I said, I told you what my lineup will be, and we'll probably repeat it in a minute. But I do like Alcaraz a lot. I guess it's two different questions nowadays. You give your team selection, or you give what you think the manager will do as well. Well, my selection would be, it's relatively predictable, I think, and then. But then I'd have Diblin on the right, Grealish in the 10, and Dyer on the left, and Barry up top. And if that doesn't look to work, then, or we think they can get more from it, then Grealish can go on the left and then Dyer in the middle and go that way. And obviously nothing changes from a defensive point of view. I don't think anything necessarily can change at the moment. So we'll see how they go. But defensively, I think O'Brien and Mikalenko both good, and I think O'Brien's getting much better going forward as well. So it's not any aspersions on him to say that Everton perhaps lacking a little bit of balance because they don't have a natural right back there. I think he's done a fantastic job. Spent a bit of time with him down at Finch Farm this week, so he's just really pleased with the chances that he's had at Everton. Especially spoke to him 12 months ago when he wasn't getting a game under David Moyes, and it's really interesting then that he never lacked this belief that he'd get an opportunity and that he'd take it when he got it. And what I found quite interesting, the same was Jesper Lindstrom 12 months ago, was even when they weren't getting games and they were relatively new to the club, despite that frustration, they were still happy there and kind of already from a very early stage, even though at that point Everton was struggling and they weren't getting minutes, they knew it was a place where they wanted to try and build their futures around. O'Brien has obviously done far better at that than Lindstrom, and I think he earns a lot of credit for what he's helped to do. But I think probably everybody would look forward to the day that he's competing for a spot in the middle, because I think that's where he could. That's obviously where he's at his best, isn't he? So. My team selection is probably the exact same as yours, unchanged from a goalkeeper point of view, defensive point of view, and the two holding midfielders, Diblin right, Grealish middle, and Dyer left, and I'm happy to give Barry a go in that sense. However, if Moyes is just going to go with Alcaraz as the replacement for Dewsbury Hall, I think would be a little bit naive not to play Beto there, because obviously the partnership that's been struck up in the past between Alcaraz and Beto. But we'll see what Moyes does. Predictions? It's going to be a tough game. Obviously, I think we've all seen how long they've gone unbeaten. And we haven't really talked about Palace, really, have we? No, they're obviously a very good side and very good form at the moment, and it would be brilliant if Everton could be the team that ended that run, and I think it's got the weapons there. But it's got a draw nailed all up over it. It has, for me. I don't think a draw would be a bad result. I don't think a draw would be a bad result at all. So hopefully Everton can just, Moyes can just explore a few more things around his starting 11 and his setup, and yeah, they can take that into the it's proper winter schedule, isn't it? Once we get back, I know we've got big storms this weekend. I think by the time we get back in a fortnight's time, we'll be well into October, won't we? With everything that brings ahead of us. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game on Sunday, and yeah, looking forward to it. I was at Preston on Saturday. Obviously, I haven't played on Monday, so I went to Deepdale to have a look at Harrison Armstrong.
Okay.
So starting to settle in there. Had a bit of a tough month because obviously he arrived on deadline day. The season's already started. Team's already had its pre-season, everything like that. And Preston started the season really well, so taking a while for him to get in. He had his first start away at Hull on Tuesday, and yeah, they like him a lot there. So there's a piece on the Echo website about that now. I spoke to manager Paul Heckingbottom about him, and yeah, I think they're excited for what he could potentially do for them this season. There's no doubt that in their minds that he can be a big attribute to them, even if he hasn't quite had that chance or hasn't had as many chances yet to be as influential as we know he can be. So
yeah, go and give that a read. Interesting stuff. I'm going to go, I've said nailed on draw. I mean, I'm sitting on the fence because it's like, I've said nailed on draw, and then I'm going to go 2-1 win. I think what we need to take advantage of is the fact that Crystal Palace played in Europe last night.
Yeah, that helps. You
would like to think it would help, because they played a strong side, and they're still going to have to play a strong side against us on Sunday.
They went away to keep. Well, they went away to play Dynamo Kiev, didn't they? So that'll all add in the miles, and that win against Liverpool went to the wire, didn't it? So that'll have taken something out of
Is
them
this their first That was their first European game last night, or have they played? Is that the second?
They've played in Europe already this season. I'm not sure if that was in the Conference League or if that was a qualifier.
Either way, they've done it, so they've got a bit of experience in doing that, basically.
Yeah, but they're a very good side, and you look at the teams that are flourishing at the minute. They're teams that are several years on from where Everton are right now. The teams that do well at the top end of the table or against the top clubs tend to be the ones that have been able to have their rebuilding process take over place of 2 or 3 years and 2 or 3 summer transfer windows, and they have that stability that runs through it. And if Everton want to get to those teams, people are going to need patience, because you look at what Bournemouth and Crystal Palace are doing right now. They're not doing it overnight. And if you look at some of the teams that struggled, you can see what happens if you build your team on if you rebuild your team on sand. Then you see Forest have lost a few key players, and they've changed manager and set up behind the scenes there, and they've had a difficult start to the season. We've seen the same with Aston Villa, haven't we, as well? It's none of this is easy. So
I think you're right in the sense of a draw on Sunday, taking into account just that game and isolating that game, is probably not a bad result in terms of how Palace are playing and how good they actually are. But after the international break, it's City away and then Tottenham at home. Like 2 tough games, isn't it? So we really need 3 points on Sunday. Otherwise, it's could be starting to look like a bit of a tricky period for Everton.
As I say, I can understand the disappointment and the frustration, and I agree with it to some extent, because I think there have been missed opportunities. I think this period between the September and the October international breaks is probably one that's been characterised by missed opportunities. Everton have had chances to make November easier for them by having a few more points or still being in the Carabao Cup. They haven't taken them, but I'm still relatively content at where Everton are and what they're doing.
Fair enough. Well, Joe, enjoy your holiday.
Cheers, thank you.
That is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.